We're back again. Jon Heyman here with J.P. Morosi, John Paul Morosi, and we're very excited. It's the second time in a row we're going to do this together. We love it. Chat at us. Obviously, a big day again with Alonso going to the Orioles. 5 years, $155 million. Mets were nowhere near that. They didn't want to do that, and we'll talk about that. Obviously, we're going to get to a lot of stuff on the pitching market, that big Padres rumor, and a bunch of other stuff that's out there. But right now, we're going to start with the Orioles. You've been reporting all along that the Orioles are big players in this market. You had mentioned that they had contact and discussions with Tucker. I don't know if that's still possible. They already got Ward, Alonso, Kittredge, Helsley. I mean, the Orioles are the big winners so far. What do you think about what they're doing?
John, very impressed, and it is apparent to me that the Baltimore Orioles, through ownership and their top-level management, have said, we need a better team. We are willing to spend for a better team, and I think that's one of the key things I've taken away from this. That's a significant investment in Pete Alonso. To your point, John, well above what the Mets were willing to go to sign Pete Alonso on top of the other moves they've already made. They're now not fully eclipsing the Toronto Blue Jays, but they've narrowed that gap significantly. And to your point, they're not done. While I don't necessarily expect them to get Kyle Tucker at this point, I do believe they are in there heavily on the top end of the starting pitching free agent market. So the Orioles right now, I agree, they're one of the big winners. The Mets, probably the opposite, and we'll get to them, I'm sure, more.
Probably. You're such a nice guy. Oh, my God.
So we'll get more into
I've never done a show with such a nice guy. You know, I usually do with Joel Sherman.
we'll get more into the Mets in a second.
Really nice.
But they have got, John, some work to do. And the thing I love about Pete Alonso in that ballpark, I think he is going to add so much. They knew they needed, John, and we talked about this before, right-handed power in that Baltimore lineup to balance the likes of Gunnar Henderson. And my goodness, you've now added Taylor Ward and Pete Alonso. All of a sudden, top to bottom, John, this is no stretch to say, the Baltimore Orioles now have one of the very best lineups of any team in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I think their new owner is terrific. He wants to win. David Rubenstein, he's not a poor owner. I know it's a small market. Obviously, they are willing to do stuff. I'm with you. I think they're looking at pitching, whether that be Ranger Suarez and perhaps a couple others of that ilk in that category. Michael King, Zach Gallen, maybe not Imai. I don't think they think Imai is going to go to Baltimore. Who knows? You never know. Maybe he likes crabs. I don't know.
And maybe he's paid attention to these signings. Maybe he watches our live stream on Bleacher Report and knows this is the place to be.
Yeah, I think Imai is a regular watcher, and he certainly will be now that you're part of it. This is terrific. I don't know if Baltimore's eclipsed Toronto, but I think they're a playoff team at this point. It's on the way to being a playoff team. They have terrific talent. The lineup is excellent. Gunnar Henderson did not have his type of year last year. I think he is a superstar waiting to happen. I do think Rutschman will be better. They certainly underperformed last year, and they're a young team, and now this is a big add. I'm not sure why the market doesn't love that big righty slugger. I get it. He's not great on throws, especially after we watch Vlad Guerrero Jr. My God, he can throw to any base, anytime, no matter what. I get that. He's not a great thrower, but, I mean, how many circumstances is that going to affect you during the season? He is great on scoops. Overall, defensively, maybe he's a little below average, but I think he makes up for it with 130 RBIs and 40 home runs, and I give the Orioles credit. I think they're on the right track.
Most home runs of any right-handed hitter in the game since 2019. John, he has, I believe, played underrated defense in terms of his ability to scoop. Given those two parameters, I would much rather have someone who is an expert at scooping balls out of the dirt and those aspects of fielding as opposed to throwing. And the other thing I'll say about Pete Alonso, John, for a team that was a little bit listless last year, this past season in 2025, they probably didn't have the most accountable clubhouse. They probably didn't have the most harmonious clubhouse.
The Mets?
The Orioles.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to the Mets later, I promise.
We're getting the Mets, don't worry.
But the Orioles, let's put it this way. In a fractured Mets clubhouse, Pete Alonso was not the problem.
No, absolutely not.
And so he comes into the Orioles now as someone with a ton of credibility. Right. And one of my favorite numbers about Pete Alonso, 162. He has played every single game in the regular season in 2024, and 2025. Leadership and accountability and consistency, John, as we both know in this sport, they go hand in hand. Pete Alonso posts, and he now brings that accountability to the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, I mean, he's tough, and he's New York tested. We know he walked away from a rollover with his Jeep on his way to spring training from Tampa, going to Port St. Lucie without a scratch. This is a guy not only just posting 162 last year, and I don't know how many people know this, the birth of his first child late in the season. They're in the pennant race. They arranged it to do it after a night game.
Wow.
So he played the game, whatever that game was in September, went to see the birth of his child, his first child. Not that it matters. All children are important.
That's right.
It was his first, just for the record, it was his first. Saw the birth. Played the next day, no days off. I mean, I'm working at some place where somebody took 3 months off for paternity leave, and I don't like to besmirch anyone. I'm not going to name names. He played the next day. He played that day. This is a guy who really is undervalued. Okay, let's get to some chats at me. You're absolutely right. I don't know whether that means you or me, but I think we're both right. We're going to go
I
with
agree.
that.
Thank you, by the way.
All right. This is a bad contract. I mean, it's not a bad contract if you're an Oriole fan. That's
no, and there's the statement that's been made, John, and you and I know this from covering the postseason and the offseason so many different times. If you are going to stay completely disciplined on a big free agent, you will never sign the big free agent. You have to stretch your idea of what you are comfortable doing. Obviously, the Orioles went just beyond where the Phillies went to get Schwarber. So certainly, John, I was paying attention to that. Yeah. I can do the math.
Well, these agents here are in competition.
They're a little competitive.
They wait, and I think we heard that Bellinger was going to wait to see Tucker. Now he's not going to beat Tucker, but I think there is something to that, and they look at what the other signings go for. They both got good deals. I don't think they're crazy deals. Cease was a big deal. That was a really big deal. These deals, I think, are in line with the predictions. I think I had 165 for Alonso. I had 140 for Schwarber. I don't see these.
They're fair. And by the way, John, I will say this. I am not convinced that Bellinger will sign after Tucker. I think it's possible that the Mets, and maybe this is a good time to get into the pivot of what's next for them.
Right.
I think it's entirely possible that the Mets' reaction, if they're going to have one, is Cody Bellinger. He fits them even better right now, John, because Bellinger, if the Mets sign him today, Bellinger can play first base for them.
Right. Bellinger can play first. He can play center if they need that. They're kind of saying Carson Benj has a good shot to be their center fielder. I kind of get that, although he's left-handed. Same thing with Bellinger. They're already a little too left-handed. They didn't seem that concerned about that, though. They were concerned about the run prevention.
Right. They had Semien, a righty bat.
Doesn't Diaz help with run prevention? I mean,
Diaz helps with run prevention.
Sure what's going on there. I can't imagine that anybody in the organization is that thrilled that he's gone to the Dodgers. That deal was not out of whack at all. That was actually below what I had predicted. Not that my predictions are always coming true. It was a record for a closer. I mean, he deserves it. He was fantastic. He was the best closer in the league. I can't believe they let him go. I mean, I could see on Alonso because they had that run prevention thing that they've been talking about. But to me, big right-handed bat, that's the guy they needed. To me, that's the guy they needed. Now, you get Bellinger. He's an outstanding defender at every position. Maybe they love that, but he's a left-handed. He's another ex-Yankee. That's
right.
The fans, they love their guys. Alonso is a fan favorite. Does that not matter? It feels like it's all about the metrics. Nothing else matters. And I mean, to me, the fans, without the fans, you have nothing. And the fans are not going to be happy. Even if Bellinger outproduces Alonso was their guy. He's the all-time home run champion with the Mets. Diaz was their guy. They had Timmy Trumpet playing. I don't even know what Mr. and Mrs. Met are going to do now. They're going to have to find something for these guys to do. They've been playing along on that, whatever that instrument that they're playing.
Right. Well, John,
it's sad. It's really sad if you're a Mets fan.
I'll say this, and you know this market very, very well, and I'll ask the question this way. Which player do Mets fans feel most connected to, at least before today? Pete Alonso or Juan Soto?
Oh, Pete Alonso.
There's your answer.
All right.
And at some point, yes, you've got to win ball games. This is a competitive sport. All these elements are important. But this is still show business, entertainment, and emotional connection. and Mets fans have been emotionally connected to Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz for years. This is, I know I have just Mets friends in my life, not work colleagues, just friends, who are right now bereft about this news. They are despondent over these two signings, and they're asking me what's next. And my answer is it's a good question, because unless the names are Cody Bellinger or Ranger Suarez, who you would at least be signing away from your division rival, that would give Mets fans some measure of satisfaction. But it's still difficult to see them feeling satisfied at the end of the day.
If they come up with Skubal somehow and sign him to an extension, then Mets fans will say, okay, we got
That's
something
acceptable.
we can hang our. Certainly not. I like Ranger Suarez. I like Bellinger. These are very good players. They're not Pete Alonso to the Met fan.
Yes.
Talk to the Met fan.
Yes.
I think this is an issue. The other issue is, what about the clubhouse? Are they interested in improving the clubhouse? Now, my understanding is some Mets people have talked to other agents out there and saying they want to improve the clubhouse. They're telling us their clubhouse was fine, and to me, it looks like they don't really. They're telling us the truth, which I can't even believe that they're telling us the truth instead of the other agents. And I don't think it seems like it matters to them what the clubhouse is, because you lose Nimmo and Diaz. They're two out of the four most upbeat
And Alonso's
guys.
really important. He's a very positive guy.
Alonso's fine in the clubhouse, but the most positive guys in that clubhouse, and I'm there a lot, are Marte, who's gone or as a free agent.
Nimmo.
And
Sugar.
Diaz and Lindor. And right now you've only got Lindor left. You've also got the issue of Lindor and Soto not speaking to each other very much. They're going to say, oh, it's no big deal. They're going to say that anyway. I don't know if that, you have to say it's no big deal if you're the Mets or anybody there. But we see it every day. And they need to, I think they need to work on the clubhouse, and bringing in Devin Williams to replace Sugar, a guy called Sugar. Devin Williams' nickname is not Sugar. Not Sugar. He is not. There's nothing sweet about him. He's fine. He's not going to disrupt anything. He's not a bad guy. He's just a little kind of morose. I mean, that's the way it flies for me anyway. And they had him in Milwaukee, so I think they're telling us the truth, and they don't care about the clubhouse.
And John, to your point, a couple things. Number one, I'm not in the Mets clubhouse as often as you are, but when I was in there in 2025, the word that I would use is tense. It felt like a tense room.
Yeah.
It felt
didn't start
uneasy.
out that way, but
right.
it certainly was at the end.
It felt
You're
tense.
Right. It was at the end. All right, how did David Stearns allow a player like Pete Alonso to walk away? My answer is short. I don't think he was that interested in keeping him. I
think you're right, John.
Because that contract is bad. We both disagree with that. We're already on that. 5 years is not a bad contract at 31. You know what? Schwarber's 2 years older and got 5 years. Pete does play a position. You may say he's below average defensively. He does provide that. I don't think there's any guarantee who's going to age well, who's not going to age well. I think that is hard to predict. I personally think Diaz will age well, and I've had baseball people tell me that Diaz is going to age well. And we've seen closers, go out there at age 38, 40. Kenley Jansen's still going. Aroldis Chapman's still going. I'm not sure why every team kind of agreed it's a 3-year deal and no more than that. I don't get that, but good for the Dodgers, And by the way, signing all these guys, that only helps them sign more guys.
That's very true.
People want to come to the team.
And then on the other side, John, this is what I'm seeing with the Mets, and this unfortunately will not exactly appease our Mets friends who are watching right now. There's nothing we can say today that will make you feel any better. But what I will say as a reality check, and I think, John, your experience would probably line up with this, is that when you are in a situation where your fan base is demanding a major move in response to moves that did not go your way, the Mets are not exactly operating from a position of strength. Other GMs know that they are somewhat boxed in. The other agents know they're somewhat boxed in. This is not an environment in which you're going to make a very safe, easy, painless move. You probably now have to go further outside your comfort zone because the industry now knows that you are under duress.
Right. I mean, you're going to have to overpay, too.
Correct.
And you're so intent on getting a good, quote-unquote, good deal, getting Diaz for $3 million or $5 million less. When you spent $765 million on a player last year, you couldn't give 10% of that to a guy who's been a great and loyal Met. I think,
John, I think you touched on it, that the one response they could make that would appease the fans is if they trade for Skubal and extend him.
I don't know if it would appease them because I'm a New Yorker, but I would say it would distract them.
A distraction.
Distracted.
A successful distraction.
Exactly. All right. Red Sox, John, you can answer this too.
Sure.
I think they're in the market. They can do two big things. I think that's what they're telling people. So could that be Marte? Could it be Bregman? Could it be Okamoto? Could it be Polanco? I do think they like Marte. That would be interesting. But to me, Bregman is probably the guy for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's the incumbent guy, although we can't assume anything here. We've seen two big stars leave their team already, and Bregman only been there a year.
2 of the 4, I think, is a fair expectation. I certainly think at least one. Sure. I will say what I was told yesterday, which is that if Ketel Marte moves, the Boston Red Sox have as good of a chance to get him as any other team because the Boston Red Sox have what the Diamondbacks want, which pitching, is young, optionable starting pitching. Totally early, that group of young pitchers.
Right.
By acquiring Oviedo, by acquiring Sonny Gray, the Red Sox have given themselves the flexibility to then trade from that depth to address second base. And then if you do that, by the way, once you bring Marte into the organization, he's a very inexpensive player, salary-wise. And so then you certainly have the payroll flexibility to still sign Alex Bregman. And by the way, John, I believe Bregman is a better fit. He's an even better fit for the Red Sox now than he was a year ago.
Well, certainly there's no Devers there.
There's no Devers.
Right.
So and he's a slightly more complicated fit for the Tigers. I think the Tigers would love to have him. Right. But remember, the Tigers are already spending money on Gleyber Torres. I think that once Torres accepted the qualifying offer, it reduced the odds of the Tigers being able to fit Bregman under what is admittedly a more reduced payroll.
Yeah, the Tigers are smart people, and that's a tough calculation whether to give the qualifying offer. But I think some people over there were surprised that Gleyber Torres took it, and maybe one or two of them was maybe even a little, even though they like Gleyber Torres, disappointed that it's $22 million. That's some real money, right? $22 million. We're talking, we're throwing things around here like Ketel Marte, he's a bargain. He's not $92 million.
Yes.
He's got $92 million left. Phillies, what do we think about JT? Obviously, is a guy that they're looking at. I think their pitching is pretty good. Maybe a little help in the bullpen. I feel like Suarez will probably go somewhere else. They're going to look at the outfield, I think, a bit. Bader, to me, still fits them. I think they would talk about Marsh. We know they're not going to have Castellanos. He will be gone one way or another, whether it's a trade or a release. To me, he's got to be worth $2 million a year, right? Is he worth nothing? I can't. To me, he's worth something.
They should be able to find a spot. Given, John, to your point earlier, the shortage of right-handed power in the industry, Nick Castellanos, if you pay down the salary enough, is a worthwhile 1-year prove-it scenario for any number of teams. Just get him in a good hitter-friendly ballpark, which admittedly he was in Philly, but it's time. Just like it's time for Nolan Arenado. Yeah. It's time.
Well, they haven't found anybody even to pay a couple million, I don't think.
And
maybe they're asking for, some of half of the pay or a quarter. I don't think they've got
I'm still quite certain that Nolan Arenado will be somewhere else by the time spring training starts.
I hope so.
It's
gone
time.
Last year, I probably should have accepted the Astros.
Correct.
Those are tough calls. I'm not blaming him. I think he's a future Hall of Famer, but can't be too picky sometimes, even with a no trade. It usually works out, right? Giancarlo Stanton rejected 3 or 4 teams.
That's right.
And
he got to the right spot.
He finally said, "Okay, I'm a Yankee."
He got to the right spot.
But you know what? He's coming off of 59 home runs. Arenado was coming off of a 100 OPS.
I would like to see, and obviously follow the Tigers carefully. I think that Arenado in Detroit, if they pay that salary down enough, would be a really good fit. He'd be a veteran in the group of a very young collection of position players. And also, the Tigers need a little bit of an adjustment to their personality. I think Nolan is a grinder. He's a grinder who's on his way to the Hall of Fame, but he's got that grinding mentality nonetheless that I think would be very good for the Tigers team.
I'll take your word for that. You know more the Tigers better than I do. All right, Orioles getting Tucker, Valdez, and Suarez. Well, good luck. They've done pretty well already. Let's not get greedy here, all right? But I get it. They had a disappointing year last year.
John, they are still, from what I was told, they still want a high-end starting pitcher. And that is a really important important element for the Baltimore Orioles. You look at their rotation. Yes, they're expecting Bradish to bounce back and give them quality. All of those things are true, but they want to get at least one more good starting pitcher.
All right, what kind of pitchers are the Orioles getting? I mean, I think we kind of covered that, right? Suarez is on the board, King maybe, something like that.
The one suggestion there of Lindor being traded to San Diego, I don't think so.
They don't have money to throw.
We've heard a lot of really interesting ideas in these hallways this week. That is not one of them.
Right, and let me say something. From what I understand, we're going to get to the Padres shooting big later, and I'm going to try to clear that up later if I can. Pirates. They want to add offense. They supposedly have $30 million. They offered $30 million to Schwarber. It wasn't enough to bring him to Pittsburgh. They would have had to offer maybe $100 million.
I think it would have been. It would have had to be big.
It would be a lot. Yeah, I mean Baltimore tried at 150. If they'd gone to 160, maybe he would go. I don't know. You know what's remarkable to me about Schwarber? 4 years ago, when he was a young man, 28, and he's still a young man, but when he was 28 years old, he got half as much, $79 million. Now he gets $150 million.
Yeah.
And he's 32. Everybody talks about age. I mean,
he's a special person, special player.
They're not all the same.
They're not all. That's a very, very wise point.
Yastrzemski close to signing? Yes, I think so. All right, let's go. Any Giants rumors? You seem to be a little more plugged in with the Giants than I am.
I do think Imai, Suarez, they fit.
I'm with you. They need to get pitching because even if they have an average offense, they can win because we saw them win when Cody Ross was their best offensive player.
Back in 2010.
Eventually they got Panda and they had Posey, but they still were a below-average offensive team, and they still won the World Series. Bochy is probably the greatest manager ever, but
certainly he's in that conversation.
Now they have a college. We'll see how he does. Mets are, well, I'm not going to read the rest of that. That's not so nice. I mean, you guys have probably already seen that. We might want to block that one out. Any Braves news today? Now you're being strong. I think they need a shortstop. I mean, maybe they could tell you Dubon's going to be their shortstop. I think he's a great utility man. I don't think he's.
I agree that they need a shortstop, and I was a little surprised, John, that Ha-Sung Kim did not stay there. Although I'm curious to see what Ha-Sung Kim's market is like going forward. If someone signs him in the right situation, they're going to be, I think, very happy with the results. I believe Ha-Sung Kim is due for a huge bounce back in 2026.
Yeah, right. He turned down like 15 or 16 million.
Could still be Atlanta. The Tigers also a potential fit there.
Yeah. Interesting. Why are the Cubs owners so cheap? That's going to be a hard one to answer. I don't know. I'm not sure why they're so cheap. They say they are not cheap, but they've never signed anyone for $200 million. We know their business model, fantastic. They've done a great job with that. They're on the cusp of something pretty big. I think they need to sign somebody good, maybe Imai. That seems to be a possibility. I won't make you answer that. You're too nice to answer why somebody's so cheap. It's kind of a loaded question. Are the Dodgers Scooble reports true? I don't think they're true at the moment.
I don't think so either.
I do think the Dodgers and the Mets are the teams best equipped to get them. If they want.
I agree.
If they're in a run prevention.
Mets even more so than the Dodgers because again, they've got prospects and also. A Scooble trade has to be made by a team that is somewhat desperate. The Dodgers are not desperate. They've got, if anything...
But they just got Diaz.
Right.
They were happy to get Diaz.
But starting pitching is different. They actually have the Dodgers, remember this name, River Ryan, who has not pitched. He's a great name, first of all. But he hasn't pitched in the major league since 2024. Came back. He was actually almost ready to rejoin the active roster in the World Series if he was needed. River Ryan, I'm told, has looked great and is ready to rejoin the Dodger rotation. Remember Emmett Sheehan, full season of him. So if anything, the Dodger starting pitching ledger is better now than it was even during the World Series.
Okay, River Ryan, Sheehan, and two other guys for Scooble. Done. All right. We'll see. I don't know. Don't go with that. That was just
we're not going to clip that. We're not going to clip that and put it on the internet. That is not going to happen.
They're close at this point, but I would rule out a trade, and I think the Dodgers and the Mets are the likely.
Do we want to do a rapid fire few here of these remaining topics on the screen?
One more question that we can answer. No, I'm gonna follow your lead here. Mackenzie Gore trade. I think he's going somewhere. Where I couldn't tell you. I know the Padres love him. What else can you tell me about Mackenzie?
Baltimore loves him too. And by the way, again, we talk about the Orioles a lot today. The Orioles and Nationals have never made a trade.
Wow.
Not the last transaction.
Oh, the Maston
Correct.
issue.
So the last transaction between those two franchises was in 2001 when they were still the Expos, and Tim Raines was involved.
Whoa.
That's how far back it goes.
That is fantastic trivia.
Yeah, how about that? So there is some conversation there between the Orioles and Nationals about Mackenzie Gore. I agree with you, John. One of the very best starting pitchers that's available. I've heard a variety of teams linked to Mackenzie Gore. Cubs, Giants, Red Sox as well, Phillies, although I have a hard time imagining that within the division. The Mets have been involved on Mackenzie Gore. And by the way, that might actually make a bit more sense if you're David Stearns from a Mets perspective, that at least you would get 2 years of him as opposed to 1 year of Skubal. So let's give him a little bit of grace.
I'll take the 1 year of Skubal.
Okay.
All right. Dodgers in on Tucker. I think they're in on Tucker. They're in on everybody. If they can get him at the right price, they'll take him. I don't think they're going to get him at their price. We didn't think that about Diaz either, so you don't know. But I don't think he's going to go for a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal. I think he's going to get a big deal. Is he going to get $400 million? I didn't predict that. I don't think so, unless it's deferred. I'm not going to say deferred like Ohtani's deal, but somewhat deferred. He's obviously a terrific all-around player. 4 WAR the last 5 years. The only other guys to do that are Soto, Judge, Ohtani, and Ramirez, one of 5 guys. So this is a terrific guy. Who else on Tucker?
I was actually going to ask this question. Okay. Is he a better fit, John, in your estimation? Because we've heard both these teams on Tucker. Mets or Yankees? Which team does he fit better?
I don't think he fits either team. I do think that both teams have checked in with him. It doesn't feel like...
And I agree with you, by the way. I don't see a great natural fit.
They got Judge and they got Soto, right? I mean, so why in a right fielder? Can't you find
I'm with you.
Find someone else.
That's where, and I've said this before, and I will repeat it here because I think it's very relevant. Cody Bellinger is a better fit for the Mets than Kyle Tucker is. Period.
Yeah, I can't believe how this is lining up for Bellinger. I think I wrote about the Mets' interest in Bellinger 3 months ago, and everybody was calling me crazy, and I started to doubt it after a while. They're heavily left-handed. They really going this way.
It's a phenomenal
Don't they want to keep Diaz and Alonso? But right now it feels like Bellinger could be a Met. Latest on pitching market. What else? I mean, I'm going with Imai and the Cubs as a possibility.
Right.
I've gone with Suarez, potentially Orioles. What else? What have you heard?
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about Framber and Ranger Suarez because they're the two main lefties on this marketplace right now. Framber Valdez has met already this offseason in person. We talked about this before with the Mets, with the Giants, with the Orioles. All 3 of those teams are still very much involved. To circle back a bit on Mackenzie Gore, one team that would potentially trade for Gore, but that is not really involved at the high level of the free agents, is the Padres, who have had Gore before.
Right, they love him.
They love him.
They love him.
And of course, they traded him for Juan Soto. The idea there being that they would trade potentially Nick Pivetta to bring back some prospects and then strengthen their prospect group to then go out and try to acquire Gore from the Washington Nationals. So stay tuned on that possibility. But free agent-wise, again, Framber Valdez and Suarez, similar marketplaces, Giants, Orioles, Mets, all involved.
I'm glad you left it there. We're going to hit the Padres shooting big quotes. You talked about Gore and the Padres. The shooting big is now taking on a life of its own. And, I mean, if the story is as written, you would assume they're talking about Tatis, right? Because Bogarts and you would assume that. I'm not saying that's correct.
Right.
Bogarts and Machado are not going anywhere.
And Cronenworth has a big contract. They'll listen on him, but
the way the story's written is that it's some monster deal, right? What's a monster? The only monster deal in my mind is Tatis that they can make.
Correct.
And I'm hearing Tatis isn't going anywhere.
At
least that's the impression I'm getting. And they're talking about Pivetta, which I think has been written in San Diego, and some of the other pitchers. They're being asked about Mason Miller. They love Mason Miller.
They do.
Does somebody else love him more than A.J. Preller? I'm not sure. But those are the guys that they're at least being talked about.
And as a final thought on the Padres, John, I'll say this. What player would you prefer? If the money was the same, which player would you prefer? Fernando Tatis Jr. or Kyle Tucker?
I mean, I'd probably take Tucker just because it's a sure thing of what he's going to do almost every year, put up that 140 OPS plus, have as many walks as strikeouts. He's a good defender. He's not a great defender like Tatis. Tatis is a little bit streaky. He's more exciting for the fans. I think that's the reason I just have a hard time believing they would trade Tatis.
Yes.
The fans love this guy. Of course, now we see the Mets let Diaz and Alonso go, and the fans love him.
So that's my point. I tend to agree with you that narrowly I would prefer Tucker. However, this is where it becomes interesting. Let's say you're a team that really wants a big outfield bat and that you miss out on Tucker. Do you pivot and try to acquire Tatis from the Padres? If you're the Blue Jays, for example. So if you're the Jays, which they seem to have tremendous financial resources right now,
they do.
Would the Jays turn around and say, okay, well, we miss on Tucker, but we will go after Tatis and try to acquire him?
I liked your Red Sox for trading for a pitcher because they have those young pitchers to give up. I'm not sure they're not giving up Savage, right? He was fantastic.
Correct. Yes.
So I'm not sure if they have the wherewithal.
I don't see it either. I think Tatis. John. It sounds like we have both talked
we've talked
ourselves into believing Tatis is staying put.
I think he's staying put, so I'm not sure what they consider really, really big. Cubs getting Bregman and Imai, I'm going to doubt that, although that's about as much money as Tucker, so could make sense from that standpoint. I think Imai is more likely for the Cubs at this point. They are looking at Bregman. They did have a Zoom call, as Robert Murray pointed out, but I think it'll be, if it's one or the other, and I don't see two for the Cubs. I think it's Imai.
That's interesting to note there. Mets in on Bregman. Would Beatty move to left field? Thoughts?
Beatty was good at third, or into run prevention. So I don't think so. I don't think they want to switch him to left field now that he's, I want to say, master third, but he's become above average third baseman. Of the starting players, he was the only one with a plus,
defensive
above average.
WAR, right?
I mean, Tyrone Taylor was fantastic.
Center fielder, yes.
Their backup catcher, what's his name? Fantastic.
Yes.
Incredible. But the starting players were all, even Lindor, even Nimmo, they were all about average last year. So, and Beatty was the one guy who was actually above average. So I don't think they're going to do that. But interesting thought, Dodgers targeting Jarren Duran or Donovan. Everybody's looking at Donovan, I think.
The whole world wants Brendan Donovan.
So.
By the way, the second base trade market is certainly one that we're watching carefully as these meetings adjourn. Brendan Donovan, Brandon Lau, Ketel Marte, to some extent Jake Cronenworth. And I think part of this, John, we haven't mentioned this name yet in this conversation, is Bo Bichette. Yeah. I think the availability of a lot of middle infielders right now in trade is one thing that's slowing up the Bo Bichette free agent market.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the hitters have not. I mean, Alonso and Schwarber.
Right. They sort of stand alone. And Josh Naylor.
But we got a long way to go. You're absolutely right. You got a lot of good players, not just Bichette and Bregman, on and on. Eugenio Suarez, who we're not hearing much about.
It's been very quiet. Jorge Polanco was a postseason hero
hitter
for the Mariners.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a lot of stuff to work on, a lot of stuff to do. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks,
Once
John.
again, JP, you're fantastic.
Likewise,
I think
my friend.
You're a great partner. I think it's a little bit of the good guy, bad guy routine, so I like that. I think that works with me and Sherman. It's a little too much of the same thing. Anyway, it's my pleasure. Signing off for Bleacher Report. I'll be back at you. Are you going to be back at tomorrow? Or most
I may be traveling, but you can call me anytime, John.
All right, that sounds great. I would love to have you anytime. I will be back at you tomorrow a little bit earlier in the day as we're packing out. They're kicking me out of here early, so I will be back at you probably at 1 o'clock. I'm told by Ryan. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.